distinguished guests, members of the faculty, and my dear friends. Welcome to the second day of Conventus' 2025, the annual management conclave at IMI Delhi. My fellow co-host Kirti and I, Devesh, will guide you through the Finance Summit. Conventus 25 arrives at a pivotal moment where business success is redefined by an emerging generation influencing every sphere, such as employees, customers, consumers, and cultural voices. This generation blends ambition with autonomy, profit with purpose, and demands authentic dialogue and balance.
This year, Conventus is structured around a theme when the next generation guides the boardroom. This theme focuses on today's generation, their digital first, interconnected lives, prioritize transparency and feedback, reshaping leadership across organizations and communities. In boardrooms, they favor freelancing over conformity, fulfillment over routine, and well-being over traditional authority, driving a future where leadership balances legacy with a change and agility with tradition. Before we proceed further, we would like to present you to the theme video of Conventus.
India, the nation of young hearts, stands at a new dawn, brimming with a vibrant generation, restless yet rooted, bold yet balanced, not waiting for a seat at the table, but redefining the very room at large.
As boardrooms evolve and the sidelines become the stage, we find ourselves at a pivotal point where lines between hierarchy and harmony blur, and wisdom finds its echo in youth.
Learnings from history, hope for the present, and dream for the future. They have it all.
A nation has come of age, and at Conventus 2025, we are writing its story. Here, courage is the currency and ideas are influence. So let's join hands to welcome the emerging dawn, to anticipate, shape, and embrace the change that will define our future.
We extend a warm welcome to all present. The theme of today's Finance Summit is Risk in the Age of Agility, Emerging Leaders' Perspectives on Financial Resilience. In today's fast-paced world, agility is key, but it brings new risks. This panel explores how emerging leaders view financial resilience. We will discuss their perspectives on navigating volatility and building robust organizations that are prepared for the unpredictable challenges of tomorrow. To understand this better, let us have a look at the theme video for the Finance Summit.
Once, risk was a warning sign, a red line no leader crossed. But the world has changed and so has strategy. Today, resilience isn't built by waiting, it's built by adapting. The future doesn't fear risk, it leads with it.
Now, I would request our Joint Secretary, Ne Pandya, to welcome our moderator for the session, Professor Dr. Yukti Bajaj. Guiding our discussion today is Dr. Yukti Bajaj, an assistant professor at the International Management Institute, specializing in contemporary financial management. She holds a PhD in corporate finance from IIT Delhi and is a published researcher in leading journals. Her deep expertise in capital structure and corporate governance makes her the ideal moderator to lead this important conversation. We're very happy to have you here with us, ma'am, today.
To share their valuable insights, we request Professor Dr. Yukti Bajaj to welcome our first panelist, Mr. Saurabh Jain. We are incredibly honored to welcome a distinguished leader with over 2 decades of profound experience in the financial services industry. Currently serving as the Senior Vice President for Product Management in Alternatives Fund Accounting at BNY, he has built an exceptional career. His journey includes pivotal roles at industry giants like Wipro and Tata Consultancy Services, where he led as a principal and a lead domain consultant in the securities and capitals markets vertical. It's a privilege to have you today.
Next, I request ma'am to extend a warm welcome to Mr. Subhashish Nath. It is a distinct privilege to welcome our next speaker, a true pioneer in the risk consulting industry. He's currently the founder and CEO at Global Risk Management Institute. As the ex-global senior partner for enterprise risk and compliance at Axis Risk Consulting, he had spent over 2 decades building and leading a premier advisory firm. His formidable career, spanning over 30 years, was forged at prestigious firms like Arthur Andersen and EY. Sir is a distinguished chartered accountant and a member of the Ready Global Growth Council Advisory Board. We're honored to have you join us today, sir.
Next, we ask ma'am to welcome Mr. Shantanu Srivastava. Sir has over 32 years of leadership experience in the financial services industry and is now an independent advisor and consultant for financial institutions in India and abroad. Until recently, he was the Chief Risk Officer at SBI Card, where he led risk management for India's second largest credit card issuer. Prior to this, he headed operational and resilience risk for HSBC in India. He also handled leadership positions in risk management for the Asia Pacific region. He was the Chief Operating Officer for HSBC Consumer Business in India and also the Chief Sales and Distribution Officer for their asset management company. Thank you for being here today.
Next, I request ma'am to welcome Mr. Anjan Bhattacharya. We're honored to welcome a distinguished leader in global risk management. He currently serves as the Global Director for Enterprise Risk Management at HCL Tech. This role follows an impressive near-decade tenure as Chief Risk Officer for MetLife India. His 24-year career includes being independent director and industry consultant in the Middle East and Africa region. He held senior leadership roles in risk and audit at Max Life and foundational roles at financial giants like ICICI Bank, American Express, and Citi. Your presence here truly is an honor, sir.
Finally, we request ma'am to welcome Mr. Mohammed Saad. Sir is currently the Vice President of Risk Management at a UK-based multinational bank. He is a seasoned professional with over 22 years of experience in the banking and financial services industry, including Barclays, American Express, and ABN AMRO Bank. A certified lead auditor, LLB graduate with masters, extensive experience in internal audit, control assurance, enterprise risk, and operational risk management for large business functions. His passion for mentoring future leaders is inspiring, and we are thrilled to have you today. I now request Professor Dr. Yukti Bajaj to felicitate Ms. Harshita Chaudhary for her presence today.
I would now like to request our moderator, Professor Dr. Yukti Bajaj, to lead us on this intellectual journey with the upcoming discussion. Over to you, ma'am.
A very good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to moderate this panel discussion, which is on such a pertinent and contemporary theme, that is risk in the age of agility, emerging leaders' perspectives on financial resilience. First and foremost, I would like to extend a warm welcome to the esteemed panelists, to my fellow colleagues, and also my dear students. With that, I open the discussion with understanding risk, which is the first keyword in the theme in VUCA world, right? So we all know we live in the VUCA environment, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Where we think that organizations should also rethink what risk is, right? So with that, I open the discussion with Subhashish, coming from a risk management background. What does risk really mean for an organization which is navigating through this VUCA environment?
Sure. Thank you so much, Professor Bajaj. Thank you, IMI, for putting together such a terrific event, great topic, and having me here. Having done risk management for about 3 decades, I want to try and use this opportunity to firstly demystify what is risk. Because still I was in consulting, it was fantastic to actually confuse the hell out of all clients how complex risk is, because that's how we earn our revenues. Now that I don't have to do it any longer, it's actually incredible as to how incredibly simple it is, because honestly, the word for it is what can go wrong. That's it. That's what a risk is. If you really demystify it down to what can go wrong, ask yourself, why can't all of you think of what can go wrong in a business? In any business. And therefore, the second myth around risk is it's about finance and financial services. It's absolutely not. Any and every business that has existed ever and will ever exist in the future has as much risk as financial services. The only difference is financial services deals a lot more with public money, and hence has been far more regulated, and hence a phenomenally higher degree of focus has existed from earlier. But if you think of all the disasters that have happened, go back in time, the firm that I worked in for 10 years, Anderson, which many of you won't even have heard of, went down because of an Enron fiasco, which was an energy business. The next fiasco, which almost took PwC down, was WorldCom, non-financial service again. Closer home, what was happening with Byju's, non-financial services. You can go on and on to recognize that risk exists across all aspects of business, supply chain, procurement, talent, marketing, digital marketing, name it. So what can go wrong? If you just ask yourself that, just very quick touching upon the VUCA part of it, forget the complexities, just look around again. And this is what I keep telling my students, that the more you kind of are worldly wise, you can be a great risk professional. What happened with the whole tariff stuff that a really interesting gentleman has been up to for many, many months now, actually weeks. Leave aside the fact that his own government is shut down for 30 days. They've now gone into the second month of non-existence with no funds. But he's been playing the tariff fund real well. That's completely taken so many countries off guard. And that's exactly what can go wrong, which is inability to be prepared for it, right? So that's one example. Think of what happened with the Iran port, which ended up getting sanctioned. What happened with Suez Canal, supply chain disruption. What happened with rare earth? Again, what happened with chips back post-COVID with large, tech companies not being able to manufacture enough laptops. So if you just really dumb it down, as I call it, what can go wrong in any business is risk. And if you look at how omnipresent it is, and how the global world's really shrunk and is going to continue to shrink further, it just tells you how incredibly uncertain that world is. So that's the easy way of viewing it.
Well, with that, I'll now hand it over to Shantanu to share his insights on what risk is in the VUCA environment.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for getting me here to this institute and to this neck of the woods. The first time I came here, and I'm digressing because it's bringing back lots of fond memories. I came here 35 years ago and I'm probably giving away my age here now. I came as not even an MBA student, as an aspiring MBA student. Two of my IM interviews were in this neck of the woods. And I came in here dressed like what you guys are. So I'm feeling very close to you guys because I've been there, wherever you are right now. And thereafter, I came here in the mid 90s as a young banker. Most of my clients were here. Quite a lot of my clients were here. In fact, I would come here to meet your founder, Mr. Prem Pandey, who was also a client of mine. And then I came here 10 years later in the 2000s for pre-placement talks and placement interviews in your institute and your neighboring institutes. So coming back here, they say history and geography are related, right? So coming back here to this part of the world makes me think about all those wonderful times from way back when. So thank you for making me feel that way. Coming back to the topic, I think Subhashi's covered a lot of it. Risk is about not what you hear of in the finance curriculum only. It is that plus a lot more, as was just described. It's about risk is anything that comes in the way of delivering strategy and achieving strategic objectives. That's another wider definition of risk that you will hear outside of the finance course. And in that sense, risk is something that everyone in this audience has to understand. Not just people who want to work in the finance profession or in the financial services sector or in the finance vertical of any company, or people who want to study finance. That's just a very small subset of all the people who need to know need to know risk. And the reason why that is important is because when we go and hire on campus, we find that people are not aware enough about risk, and that sets the difference between institutes that prepare students well for careers in the corporate world and those who don't. A lot of it is to do with employability, so you can teach a lot of stuff in the classroom, but an appreciation for risk is also important to round off the perspective that candidates come up with, and those who can come out with that kind of perspective score over those who can't. So that's another reason why you should study risk management. Coming back to the definition of risk and why it's important, apart from the example that were given, I'll give one more example just to drive home one very important point about risk. Business is not about minimizing risk or zeroizing risk. It's about figuring out what risk to take and what risk not to take, and to understand that there is, like in physics, there is law of conservation of mass or energy. In the same way, there are only trade-offs possible in risk. There is nothing that is zero risk. So risk management is about taking risk-informed decisions, not to cut risk altogether, because there is no way that you can cut risk altogether. When you cut one risk, you actually increase another risk. And I'll give you an example of how and why that can happen, or where it happens all the time. So for example, this is about 10 years ago, you may have read about this air accident called the German Wings incident. So this was an aircraft owned by an airline called German Wings, where the pilot flew the plane into an aircraft, into a hillside, because he wanted to commit suicide. And they were, in the post-mortem, it came to be learned that this was preventable. But the reason we couldn't prevent it was because we were trying to manage some other risks. So for example, in this case, the pilot, what he did was, when the other pilot, he was the co-pilot, when the main pilot went to the restroom, and this is possible in airlines, he locked the cockpit from inside. Now, until recently, that was not possible because you wanted to have free access to the cockpit. However, in prior years, cockpits were made foolproof and very, very strongly designed such that no one could enter from outside. Why was that? Because in the aftermath of the 9/11 case, where hijackers overpowered the crew of a airliner. So to prevent against that risk, they said the pilot should be able to lock himself from inside, and no one from the cabin should be able to enter the cockpit. So they tried to minimize one risk, but they created another risk. Another example of the same thing was that this particular pilot in question, he had been undergoing psychological treatment, and the doctor he was seeing was a doctor who knew that this person has suicidal tendencies. But the privacy laws in that jurisdiction did not enable him to even approach the authorities, because that would be divulging the privacy of the client, of the patient. And why was that put in place? It was put in place in the aftermath of the Second World War in Europe, where doctors would then reveal information about their patients to authorities and get them arrested. So, with all good intentions, protocols were put in place to prevent doctors from being able to talk about their patients to authorities. So, they tried to curtail privacy risk and etc. or security risk from way back when, but they ended up creating a situation where something that was preventable, in this case an accident, was not. So the point I'm trying to drive home is, in risk management, it's not about minimizing risk or cutting risk. It's about figuring out what risks will arise when you reduce one risk, and what risk you want to take, what risk you don't want to take, and how you want to manage that risk. And managing a risk is not about eliminating a risk. It's equally about transferring the risk, as in when you take insurance, for example, for some risk, or sharing a risk. Like, for example, a bank might end up sharing a risk with its call center service provider to figure out what type of losses they will exchange with each other, or what types of losses they will share with each other. You can also accept a risk, meaning that you will decide that you will live with the risk, because it's much more complicated to try and mitigate that risk. And of course, you will try and mitigate that risk as well. So there are 4 possible ways in which you can manage that risk. So some perspectives around what risk is and how it can be managed and how to live with it.
Thank you, Shantanu. So with this, I see that these days organizations are not viewing risk as a threat. Rather, they're embracing risk and they're trying to treat it as a strategic opportunity. So, Saad, what is your comment on that?
Hi. First of all, thanks a lot for having me here. It's my honor to interact with the young minds. So, definitely for me, risk is an opportunity, because I strongly believe that risk comes in proportionate to the development and growth. So, for an organization, the risk will increase when they get into, when they want to increase their stakeholder base, when they want to develop new technology, they want to embed new technology, or they want to launch a new product, they want to enter into a new industry. So when we develop and grow, the risk as well will grow. That's where I see risk as an opportunity. And it's not only for the organizations, it's for all of us as an individual as well. For me, each one of you are a risk manager. You might not be a risk professional, but you are definitely, each human being is a risk manager, because in our day-to-day life as well, we manage lots of risk, which we might not be aware. Like, for example, when we go to buy a car, we take insurance to mitigate that risk of, any damage that happened to the car. So that's how we are managing our risk in our day-to-day life. Like, each and every human being is a risk manager. And when you move ahead in your life, when an organization want to grow, develop, the risk will increase. And that's where I see risk as an opportunity. For example, as individuals, you are doing MBA to upskill yourself. This is to mitigate the risk of not being relevant and not being upskilled for the market. So this is how we should take the risk, as an opportunity, but not as a restriction.
Thank you, Saad. So if we try to take risk as an opportunity, another question that comes to my mind is, how are organizations trying to balance this bold step of embracing risks and then ultimately balancing it with prudence, right? So Anjan, any take on that?
Sure. First of all, Dr. Bajaj, Yukta, thank you so much for calling me. In fact, I just want to reveal one thing. 20 years back, right at that chair, I was sitting and I was observing a few panelists. I am also an alumni of IMI New Delhi. So it feels great to be back to my alma mater. Okay, so we have talked about business. We have talked about companies. I'd like to go a little bit away from this business topics. My view is, and as Saad, my co-panelist, just talked about, we all are risk managers in our own life. And this, fancy words like VUCA that we are talking about now has been there from the time Ramayana was written. there will always be VUCA. There will always be some kind of a complexity, an ambiguity, a volatility, and uncertainty, and that's what is life is all about. Many of the leaders, they talk about work life balance, and there has been immense amount of debate around it. My take is work is a part of your life, right? We wake up in the morning, there is a purpose. What's our purpose? What is defining that purpose? To make a difference. To make a difference, world baad mein, first to myself. Once I make a difference to myself, I'll be able to make that difference to the world. In our risk management terminology, there's a famous line that I learned from one of my mentor, and he told me this when I started my career. He said, Anjan, if you need to manage risk in your life, the first thing, and I'm repeating it, you need to know when to say no. And of course, when to say yes as well. The biggest problem we have is that we get subsumed in so much of ambiguity and complexity that we do not take the decision which is risk-based. We take decision which is emotion-based. Today, companies, how many of you believe that we do business for customers? How many of you believe we do business for customers? To serve customers? Yeah, it's okay. Guys, the first and foremost is we do business to make profits. Nobody does business for charity. Right? So when you do business to make profits, you have to take risk, because each business is about taking risk. Without risk, there is no business. So when you have to take risk, it's better to be aware of what are the decisions that can lead to, as Subhashish said, what can go wrong. And you adapt yourself to make sure that you are resilient. And any of the risk, if it has to come and hit you, you will be able to sail through from that particular kind of a situation. So having said that, today, in the boardrooms, this is what is getting discussed about. We do not want to get caught off guarded. That, there is a surprise that has come in and we were not aware. Now, that is a difficult situation to be in. That's a real serious situation to be in. And that's why we have always maintained that risk is not the job of the chief risk officer. Risk management is not the job of the CEO. Every employee in the organization is a risk manager. It is their job to raise hand and flag something that they see is not good for the end objective, profitability of the organization. And profitability is not only on financial terms, it's also from brand. You are creating a legacy, you are creating an institution. And a risk is actually any event which can jeopardize or has a potential impact in your end objectives. So see, risk is there in our personal life, risk is there in our professional lives as well. Just be aware of what's happening, what has happened, and what's going to come. If you have these three visions in you, in your domain, and that's how you advise your management, chances are that you would be able to sail through a difficult situation that may come up in near future. That's my take.
Thank you, Anjan. So I think most of the panel stresses on the fact that risk is a strategic opportunity and we should embrace it. It now brings me to the other side of the coin, which is resilience, right? So because taking bold risks requires capacity to absorb these shocks and recover from them. So I'd like now to talk to Saurabh in this aspect. Saurabh, what is your take on we keep hearing about resilience, right? But it can mean very different things in different contexts in the organization. So, how do you interpret resilience?
Thank you, Dr. Yukti. And it is a wonderful morning, and it is great to be with all of you here. So, as Dr. Yukti rightfully said, resilience can mean different things in a different context setting. As an individual, we are expected to be resilient. Organizations need to be resilient. So I'll talk about resilience in the context of organizations, right? As an organization, resilience is a commercial attribute. Now let this sink in. Resilience is commercial. In today's day and age, resilience is no longer defined solely by the size of companies' cash reserves or its debt ratio. Industry as a whole have significantly evolved over the last 2 decades or so, where we use less and less people in the process and more technology. With the kind of technology advancements that we are seeing, the pace at which we operate and the expectations from rapid transactions and client service has significantly increased, often involving third parties. So it's essential that every cog in the wheel needs to be spot on. Let me talk this through the whole topic of resilience in the context of my organization, Bank of New York. So BNY, as some of you may already be aware, is the world's largest custodian bank. We have over $55 trillion under assets under custody and administration. We operate in 100+ markets in the world. We touch 20% of the investable assets across the world. Now, what does this all mean? As an organization, in order for us to serve efficiently for our client requirements, we collaborate with third parties like sub-custodians in various markets. We engage with multiple market participants to ensure seamless end-to-end trade execution. Now, in this context, resilience is not limited just to an individual organization or to your own organization. It needs to extend to all these third-party partners. So there's a need for strong third-party governance model in place to ensure the end-to-end financial ecosystem is resilient, not just your own organization. I can think of 2 examples from recent times where a particular client of ours placed a very large value transaction that they did not intend to. But because we have got principles of preemptions built in, we were able to contact them and say, did you really intend to place such a large transaction? And they realized the mistake. And we were able to back that transaction before it actually managed to execute. And the other example that I remember where a critical market participant was having some issues on their side, which obviously they weren't aware. And as we had visibility into it, we could mention it to them that they might be having some problems. And these 2 examples, I feel, one, resilience goes as a strong competitive advantage because you're able to build that trust in your clients that you have right systems, right technology in place. But at the same time, it plays a crucial role in ensuring the overall stability and brings the strength to the end-to-end financial ecosystem. I think we can be only as successful as the broader community. As an ecosystem, the financial stability and the stability of the overall community is important to the success of an organization.
Oh, very well said, Saurabh, that, systems and the parties that you're dealing with, the clients, they also play a big role when it comes to resilience. Another follow-up question that comes here is, so that means, is it resilience will be a result of mindset or systems or both?
So I think it's a combination of both, and you're hitting the nail on the head. You know, powering an organization culture plays a key role in making sure that we run the operations efficiently and be more for our clients.
Now, taking the discussion ahead, talking about situations like crisis, right? So, how do resilient organizations, they differentiate themselves in their ability to bounce back in crisis situation? You can take examples such as COVID situation or these geopolitical tensions that were happening recently. So, how do they differentiate themselves? So, Shantanu, what would be your take on this?
Great question. So, I worked in the resilience space now for close to 7 years. And this resilience is a more evolved way of managing risk. So, the classical way of managing risk is about prevention, detection, limitation of negative consequences. Resilience is about that and much more, which is also about not thinking of what if or whether something will happen, but assuming it will happen and then preparing yourself for it. So, for example, it looks at playbooks around how to manage a crisis while it is happening, not to prevent the crisis from happening. That's a different ball game altogether. But when the crisis is happening, how the company or the organization will respond, what will be the roles and responsibilities of various people. That is about resilience. It's about managing crises while they happen, and equally importantly, bouncing back from the crisis after it's happened, coming back to your BAU situation or BAU delivery of service or BAU way of operating as quickly as possible, and then learning from this incident and in using that learning to better inform your plans and for future in terms of prevention, detection, limitation, and again managing the crisis when it happens next time. So that entire cycle is what separates resilience from risk management. One other key difference between resilience and risk management is, in risk management, you're worried about classical impacts, meaning impact on the financials of the organization or shareholder value, impacts on customers, impacts on your reputation, impacts on your relationship with regulators. Those are the ways in which you measure impacts of negative consequences in the world of risk management. In resilience, you worried about this plus a lot more. For example, you will worry about the impact on all users of the ecosystem in which you participate. What that means is you worry about what might happen to your customers' customers, for example. So let us say you are a bank and you are serving, let's say, an e-commerce company. In the world of risk management, you will worry about impacts on that one organization, and it might be just one organization whose payments, say, for example, fail for a day. And you will think about it as an impact on one client or one organization. If it's a big client, you'll think of it as an impact on a big client. But when you apply a resilience mindset to avoiding negative consequences or managing negative consequences while they're happening, you will also worry about what will happen to the customers of that e-commerce player. So, for example, will their deliveries fail or will their orders fail? And therefore, the impact is magnified by tens of thousands of times rather than just one client. Like, for example, it might happen to a taxi company. If it's in a risk management world, you worry about the impact on that one taxi company. In the resilience world, you worry about what happens to the users of the services of that organization. So the impacts on the wider ecosystem, the impacts on other market participants, the impacts that prevent the smooth functioning of markets is also what you worry about in the world of resilience. And that's what separates resilience from risk management. It's a lot more proactive, a lot more nuanced, a lot more enhanced way of looking at risk. Coming to the specific question, how are companies managing resilience? How do they manage specific crises that were pointed out, like, for example, COVID and the recent geopolitical tensions? What are examples from these two incidents around effective ways of managing resilience. I'll give some examples. So I was fortunate to be working in an organization that recognized this very early. Although my risk management journey began in 2015, by about 17, 18, we were very conscious of the fact that regulators all around the world were using the word resilience, and they were expecting this evolution that I just described. And in my company, they transformed the risk team or some parts of the risk team to also become experts in resilience. And having a body of people in the company who were familiar with the concept, who had been skilled and trained enough, was a strategic advantage, as we learned later on. It looked fairly tedious when we were going through it in 2018-19. Because as soon as we finished our socialization and training and licensing and accreditation, etc., in resilience, the pandemic began. And those organizations that, because of foresight or because of luck, happened to have in place a team of resilience experts fared much better than those who didn't. And because they were able to manage the pandemic better, they were able to have better client experiences, better, therefore, mind share of their client, better share of wallet for their clients, and better market share in the overall ecosystem, in the overall industry, and therefore better financial performance. And this happened to the bank I happened to be working in for 3 consecutive years in the pandemic. We grew in each of those 3 years, in part because of these kinds of things that my CEO then went on record to recognize that this was a strategic advantage. So what specifically was done to manage the pandemic? It sounds very basic in retrospect because that was 5 years ago as well. But at that point of time, when we were living through the crisis, or we were looking ahead at the crisis, or what would then become a crisis, it looked quite radical. So take your mind back to Jan of 2020. You guys must have been in school at that point of time, right? You heard about these press reports about some strange infection coming out of China, right? It sounded like very much like SARS or MARS or whatever, wasn't such a big deal, right? And at that point of time, the resilient organizations were the ones which said, what can go wrong? And how quickly can it go wrong? And how devastating can it get? And how should we respond? So in the company I worked for, they decided that they will prepare for making the entire organization able to work from home. Now that was complete opposite of what would typically happen in a company, because work from home as a concept used to be is well known, and it was like a chutti. When you want to work from home, it's like wanting to take a day off, and all bosses would say, no, you're just lacking, so we'll not give you permission to work from home. So in company policy, the concept of work from home was there, but it was never fully in place because we didn't know how to work from home. So when you have to prepare the entire company to be able to work from home, you have to completely reverse the way you've been thinking all along. You have to do things like, for example, massive investments. So you have to make sure everybody has a laptop, right? The entire company, and these are tens of thousands of people, right? You have to have things like a call center, which you think of as something that happens in a closed room with CCTV cameras and access control, and has thousands of people working there, hundreds of people working there. Each of those individuals being able to work from home in an as secure environment. How do you set that up? If you can't set that up, how do you manage the risk that will emanate? For example, if you're worried about information security risk or data leakage risk, what controls do you put in place to make sure that your call center agents can operate from home without you losing data, right? So what technology tools can you put in place? As you know, banks used to, until very recently, have a lot of paper. When you process transactions, you use paper. How do you avoid paper? Because you can't transport paper to people's homes, right? How do you digitize your processes? So at that point of time, being able to digitize was always a buzzword, but it was always paid lip service to. But when crisis comes, you have to drastically, very quickly transform your processes in whatever way you can in a double quick time to be able to enable your back office processors to be able to work from home. In the bargain, you will end up doing one of the 4 things I described earlier. You cannot mitigate all risks. Some risks you will have to live with, accept. Some risks you will transfer. Some risks you will share. Anyway, you will make a more risk-informed decision. But you got to do it fast. Because if you can't do it fast, the crisis will kill you. And that's what separated the ones who were able to navigate the crisis better than the others, and the effects were seen in the financial performance. Equally, in the current world of geopolitical tensions, how are the good ones managing this risk? How are the good ones being resilient, and what are the don'ts as well? So the good ones, for example, are doing things like imagining what will happen if the data center goes down? Okay, so they should do they have a backup? Everyone has a DR, but how effective is your DR exercise? What happens if your data center is in one jurisdiction, both data centers are in the same jurisdiction, and there is a war and both of them shut down? Do you have data centers outside your country? If you have data centers outside your country, how resilient are those? For example, as you noticed last week, AWS went down, right? And when you think about risk, you think, okay, I have my data in the cloud, so I'm resilient. What if the cloud service provider goes down? So then you have to worry about things like, what is their backup plan? Remember, the ones who are resilient are paranoid a little bit. And they think about risk as their problem all the time, not something that becomes someone's headache just because they've taken some decision to outsource their data to a cloud service provider, right? They're worried about how to manage that vendor or that risk when something goes wrong with that service provider. That's the difference between people who do it well and those who don't.
Thank you, Shantanu. So as you highlighted that, it's the third parties and the clients with whom you deal, and there are ripple effects in the risks also. And then as you introduce the word digitization in the COVID crisis, so from there I'll now lead the discussion to narrow the risk and resilience relationship into the finance world, touching digitization once again. So how are organizations managing these technological disruptions like cyber attacks or the use of AI and ML in finance? So Saurabh, you coming from the financial services sector where this disruption has taken place, what is your take on this thing that technological disruption is, how is that managed by the organizations today?
So this topic is very topical. Companies today are increasingly expected to drive innovation. Innovation has consistently been a buzzword that we keep hearing about. That innovation means an array of new technologies that are available now, like generative AI, large language models. We are also seeing an emergence of digital assets that is evolving out in the industry. Now, as an organization, we do not see them as threats. We see them as opportunities to help our clients to improve their business models. But we have to implement or deploy these techniques and technologies within a very resilient framework. We cannot deploy these technologies at the loss of a resilient posture. So keeping a balance between what is being very contemporary and innovative to what our clients need, but at the very same time ensuring that we have a strong, resilient posture 24/7, 365 is vital. Now, you also mentioned about cyber threats, cyber attacks. So the sophistication of these cyber attacks have increased significantly over the past many years. Sophistication in their ability to actually attack organizations, penetrate organizations, steal data, causing harm, as well as the speed at which they're able to cause that harm has significantly increased. Now, what that means for an organization to respond to that threat is like almost responding to something called zero-day vulnerabilities. There's no antidote available to a particular issue. So having higher degree of automation provides the antidote that organization needs to deal with such threats that we are seeing externally.
Okay. So, but then how can firms create an environment wherein they are cyber aware? I mean, they're aware of these threats well in advance beyond just technology. So that's like a follow-up question, which I believe.
So while technology and automation play its own part, but then going back to the point that Anjan made, everybody is a risk manager. So it's a cultural thing as well. We have to ensure if you see something, say something.
If I could just supplement, again, point Anjan made earlier, it's not only about technology, it's about mindsets. So you can have the best of controls from a cyber perspective. You can have vulnerability assessment, penetration testing. You can have red teaming, purple teaming, blue teaming. You can have assessments by third parties. But at the end of it, the strength of your controls is not about what you document in your procedure documents or in your policy documents. The strength of your controls is reflected by how well people behave. What are their roles and responsibilities, and do they live truly to those roles and responsibilities in the true spirit? And that's what separates the good from the great, or the not so good as well. And a lot of it is behavioral. So you can have the best defenses in your technology, but if people are not doing what they're supposed to do, and this is the lay rank and file of the company, not just people who work in cybersecurity, information technology, that is where the vulnerabilities come from. So, for example, phishing is a very simple way in which the defenses of a company can be breached. Phishing, for those who don't know, is someone sends you a mail with a link and you download, right? You can have the tightest defenses in cybersecurity, but if employees are clicking on phishing links, you can never be safe. And the company I used to work in earlier would do this regularly. Testing, anti-phishing simulation, and invariably a significant percentage of people, and I can't give that number, would fall prey to this type of malaise. And it's been happening for not for 1 or 2 years, it's been happening for several years. And you can keep training people, you can keep educating people, but as new people come, and it's not only about new people, actually older people also, senior people, more experienced people, they also fall prey to these things, because they think they know, but they don't actually know, or they think they know in their head, but when it comes to behaving, it's not so much ingrained in their behavior. So when they see a mail that says holiday offer or discount offer or something like that, or invitation, they will end up clicking on it. And it doesn't take too many people to do it. Even if the number of people in the company is 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 who do it, you're exposed. So fixing this problem is about transforming the way the entire company, means every single individual of the company, the way they think, behave and act. That's point number 1. And B, you can have the most fantastic policies, procedures documented, but if you don't respond to the threats that are coming to you in front of you and through your KPIs, KRIs, you will always be falling behind. So for example, if you have data that tells you that you've got vulnerabilities from a cybersecurity perspective that have been open for the past 6 months, and your board and your management are saying, okay, we can give you another 6 months to go fix it, then that means you're taking a call that you're okay with this vulnerability and you're okay being exposed. Are you making that as a conscious choice, or is it simply by default? That's the difference. So where you're making a conscious choice, then you're hopefully making a risk-informed decision. If it's happening by default, then you're setting yourself up for disaster.
So, Bashish, you want to add something here?
Actually, I'm going to roll this back a little bit and sort of get the group a little bit engaged, because I think we've got this reasonably technical. What do you think if you were in a company like Honda, Toyota, whatever? What do you think is your biggest data threat? Anyone? We heard about cyber and all kinds of tech and everything else. What do you think is a car company's biggest data threat? Anyone? Sorry? Terrific, love that. That's exactly what it is. You would assume banks are massively exposed to digital attacks. Energy companies are hugely susceptible to it. I don't know how many of you know, but a car design, from conceptualizing it to actually hitting the market, it's a 5-year journey. At least the high quality ones. But then you have an attack, take a design which has spent 3-4 years in its build phase and just give it out to some of the markets where people get out cars in a matter of a year. It's a big blow. Similarly, what do you think is the biggest threat for a fragrance and flavors company? And all of you use, everyone uses some form of. So the point being made is that, there are parts of the organization who don't even seem to be anywhere near technology. The people who are formulating those sort of fragrances, they're farthest removed from any form of technology. They seem like they're deep into scientists sitting and actually trying out different formulae. But actually, that's where the biggest threat comes from. And then one of the phrases that you always use in risk is, and then one of the reasons why, in spite of five of us here, risk professionals, you go even today talk to most organizations and say, I want a risk assessment done. And I happen to be fortunate enough to work with enough and more board members of enough and more, sought after companies. The first response is, what has to go wrong will go wrong. The reason that happens is that universally our risk frameworks are pathetically Stone Age. Stone Age of a different level. And these are difficult conversations I've had with board chairs, saying, and we've actually in small sessions proven to them that what they are not able to think through is the risk of what is called known unknown and unknown unknown. Every damn business leader is exceptionally good at managing what they run. Because if they weren't, then they wouldn't be CEOs. I haven't heard of too many CEOs who are like, they're a CEO, but it's really bad. The guy doesn't know his business. There might be one-offs. And as a board member, you try to do your CEO's job, then the first thing you should do is get out of the board. But that's not your role. Your role is to be able to ensure that you elevate the ability of that company to think beyond BAU, which is business as usual. Think, what if? What if something happens and only then can you be prepared? Companies were prepared for COVID. Indian companies. Go read case study on Eicher Motors. It's a very traditional Indian company. And you will find they were prepared for it because they were one of those very rare ones who had actually said, what if a disaster like that happens? They didn't name COVID. They didn't know it's going to hit the entire world, but they were absolutely prepared. So that is really where you prepare yourself, and there's also a concept of velocity of risk. How fast does a risk hit you? So as the word velocity suggests, higher the velocity, lower the reaction time. Lower the reaction time, higher is the cost of avoidance that you incur or cost of preparedness. Those are the things that make a company resilient. Because if you don't incur that cost of resilience, and I'll explain it in very simple terms, and that's one of the things teaching does you, is if you have an office or whatever, a factory in a Richter scale 5 zone, let's say, you get a board approval to build a Richter 7 proof building. Why? Because if the earthquake happens, the velocity is so high that then you don't have time to react. It just happens. The building just simply comes down. That's it. No one's going to tell you that, okay, now prepare for it. And hence, the cost of preparedness or cost of avoidance, which is way higher, is justified because the velocity is so high. So resilience is something which many people have earlier talked about as BCP, business continuity planning, is resilience. It's not. It's actually way beyond. It's when you think through all of your known unknowns and unknown unknowns to the extent that you can. I'm not saying people become crystal ball gazers, but to the extent you can, you are meant to then have a strategic plan around how you're going to deal with that. That's really at the heart of what your question was, which is, how do you prepare for technology? How do you prepare for, any event that happens? Those, if a company embraces those kind of attributes or concepts, highly likely you'll be sort of more successful.
Very quickly add on to what Subhashish said. So, this house will completely concur on one point, that we are operating in a very difficult environment. We have got wars, there's geopolitical situation, we have significant gyrations in the economy, there's interest rate risk. Now, while I'd like to say that I can predict what's going to come or what's going to happen, but we are not in the predictions business, right? We're in the preparedness business, exactly the point that Subhashish mentioned, that, preparedness go a long way in ensuring you.
Okay, so as we were talking about cyber attacks, and their preparedness for risk management, now shifting to AI particularly, Again, Shubhashish would like to take your take here. Whether the risk of AI, that is what AI could do to us, or risks in AI, that means what can go wrong within the systems. Which do you think is a bigger challenge for the organizations today?
Thanks. Thanks for that question. It's an absolute pet question of mine, as you're aware of it. And I'm not sort of sensitive to time, but this will take a little bit of time because I think there is, again, a general sort of misnomer around what is AI and what is Gen AI. And especially amongst this population, it needs to really disappear. AI is, sorry to say this, but it is an exceptionally old concept. And it is old wine, new bottle, period. It is superbly high-speed, mega data analytics. Behavioral science models existed in financial institutions 15 years back. They were not called AI. They were called trend pattern analysis. Today, with far greater computing abilities, more evolved algorithms, we've now started using this fancy word called AI. Unfortunately, half the world doesn't even differentiate between AI and Gen AI. Gen AI is where you obviously are generating AI, as the word suggests. And even there, the challenge lies in most of the conversation is around, oh, will AI take off jobs? And obviously, right now, you guys saw something on press a couple of days back, Amazon took away, 300,000 jobs, or plans to take out 300,000 jobs through AI. Everyone's very busy talking about risk of AI. And that risk is essentially of repetitive, non-mind application tasks being done through AI engines. Obviously, there you can use Gen AI as well to an extent. I'm not going to complicate life right now. But that is what all of you are talking about. There is a much, much bigger risk on which some of us are deep into research, which is risk in AI. I'll give you a few examples which will scare the hell out of you. One, where do you think most of the evolved digital data of the world is today? Where does it come from? Think logically. Where does most of the evolved, rich digital data of the world come from? The West. It's all of Europe and US. Therefore, do you recognize the extent of global data bias that exists and how some of that is completely not relevant for Global South, which is going to drive the world economy going forward pretty significantly? There is the highest level of research going on to figure out how do you deal with that. So that risk in AI is beyond any company. It's at a scale that people aren't even able to fathom. I'll give you a very crude, unfortunate example. Can't name the company. There was an HR leader who, and this is in the West world, I won't give the country. The HR leader consciously ensured that the first X number of applications that came in, all non-whites were ignored. Let that sink in. All non-whites were deliberately ignored, not because they were good, but that wasn't the objective at all. Because the machine at that time was being taught for future AI application in application sorting. It was a conscious bias put into that system. What that does is when this individual doesn't have anything to do with it, even going forward, there would be that bias that's built in. So I'm not even getting into the space of data security and everything else, which is even more complex, which is, please recognize that this whole Gen AI that the world talks about, even before it started flourishing, there are massive efforts on to curtail its reach. And here's what it means. If I'm a consulting firm, I have my own AI engine. Why? It's because I cannot let my people when I'm in my network, reach out to other networks because I run the risk that there is stuff of mine that can get out in the public domain. I've been on a board where there was pin drop silence when one of them told us that, this model that we've built, and by the way, it's a NBFC, so high risk. What they said was that we've put this model out there and it's benchmarked with the best in the world and it's fantastic. This is the board. My one-line question, do you realize it's no longer your model, it's a public model? That's how risky it is, and therefore, knowledge pools, consulting firms, and many others are restricting the reach of GenAI to their company. So today, if I'm just naming them random, EY, PwC, Deloitte, they will not risk their knowledge going out of their walls. So there is already walls being built, A, at a company level. Two, there are walls being built at a country level. We think only China, you're highly mistaken. Most countries which are evolved are already in different stages of regulation where they're going to prevent data moving out of their country, which is if the data servers is anywhere in their geo, you can't take it out. So that's going to be another restriction. Third, what do you think is the penetration of language neutralization? Abysmally low. There are barely 8 foreign languages that has today, there is technology ability to translate documents. That's called language neutralization. Language neutralization for the best of languages are in the 90%, but that's many which go below 70% if you go beyond the top 8 languages. What that means is this entire thing of, oh, I can reach out to data anywhere in the world, again fails because you can't even translate. Can you imagine how ridiculous it can get? If you look at a supplier invoice, the first thing on the top is usually a company's name, right? In India, many parts of it has OM. When we got documents read for the first time, we got a series of OMs of the name of the company. You have to go to that extent of teaching a machine. And now imagine that being done in 20 different languages in our country. Think of it being done in 150 global languages. There are risks in assuming that the world's going to be very different with GenAI, though it is to be leveraged for sure. I'm not in any way saying that it's not going to happen, but be live to the extent of risk in that while leveraging it as much as you can, like all of you students brilliantly do. And we were talking about that, which is half your presentations at ChatGPT and then humanization and then conversion to podcast, and then you listen to it and you sort of learn what's been told. So continue to use that. But I'll also tell you that one of our students didn't crack his interview 3 times, one after the other. And I was very surprised. He was a bright student. I heard the podcast. The podcast was wrong. He missed 3 interviews, being a good student, having learned the wrong stuff off podcast. That is the risk real life you students who use ChatGPT and every other possible AI tool massively. I know it was longish, but this is very close to my heart and I can just go on and on. Thanks.
Thank you, Shubhashi. So we now have got a very great idea to think upon in the future also. We also have been thinking that risks of AI is a challenge, but at the end of the day, this is a new thought that yes, risks in AI, we do talk about it, but not much detailed. So that's a very good idea to take ahead. Okay, so from here, we'll now transition to another evolving landscape that is associated with these kind of disruptions and technological advancements, that is regulation. So, we believe that as organizations innovate, right, and they take bolder risks, with that, regulators also start tightening the standards, right? So, with more strict regulatory standards, how can organizations still remain agile, for their decision making? So, Shantanu, anything on this, please?
Yeah, very quickly. So this is, I'll make the question a little bit more broad. What makes the risk management imperatives more strict or more difficult is not just regulations, it's also the world in which we live in. But be that as it may, regardless of what is driving stricter risk management, how do you ensure that you have equal focus on risk management and at the same time you remain agile? So I would say it's not an either or. Whatever makes for good agility or a good practice in agility also makes for good practice in risk management. So for example, the first thing they say about risk management is this should not be an adjunct to strategy. It's core to strategy. Like we described earlier, right in the beginning of the session, risk management is about strategy development and strategy execution, because risk is defined as something that comes in the way of delivery of strategy and attainment of strategic objectives. If you think of risk that way, you will integrate risk management thinking into every aspect of the organization's strategy development and strategy execution. And that's exactly how you drive agility as well, because in an agile environment you're thinking of processes not sequentially but in parallel, right? And that's exactly how risk management also works. You think of risk management to be core part of everything that you do in the company. The second thing is risk management can and should be not just about procedures and processes and protocols and frameworks. It's about roles and responsibilities. It's about how people behave. It's about assessing not just what you write in policy documents, but assessing how people actually behave. And that comes from the top, from the board, wherein you have at least annual review of the implementation of board framework, of risk frameworks. You have risk management imperatives in the scorecards of every single executive. You have KPIs and KRIs for risk management in every single rank and file of the company. And when you have that, you are embedding risk management into the DNA of the company, and therefore you are embedding a strategic way of thinking about delivery of objectives for the company. And that's exactly what happens in resilience, in driving agility as well, wherein you are making the company more nimble and you are doing things together in parallel rather than in sequence. So I would say it's not as though when you try and make a company more evolved and nuanced in risk management, you're coming in the way of agility. You're actually making the company more agile. They go together.
No, just one anecdote, but very important, and I don't know how many of your students will get into this space, but regulation has been an absolute stumbling block for companies. And I'll give you the most sort of large example I'm aware of. I don't know how many of you know GE $125 billion behemoth is what it used to be. Okay? The reason it shut down its capital business, which was humongous, their treasury was trillions of dollars, is because at one stage they started to be considered as a financial institution. The minute they became a financial institution, the extent of compliance was so high that it was beyond a giant like GE to manage that. By the end of it, they brought in, I've forgotten, former CEO of Citibank, former CEO HSBC. They did whatever they could. But it was beyond a giant like that to just deal with the quantum of compliance. So staying agile while being regulatory compliant in some industries can be super tough, banking being one, healthcare gradually is proving to be another, telecoms proved to be that way in some sectors. So I think it's a great point where agility while staying regulatory compliant is actually something which is, and you can never sort of ignore regulation, that's the problem. So just something to keep in mind.
I'll just add to this point. The reason why this question gets asked is because people see risk management as something that prevents you from doing things, right? And therefore you say, if you define risk management that way, the question is very legitimate, right? There you see a dichotomy between agility and risk management. And as I talked about earlier, they are two sides of the same coin. They are not two different things. And I'll give you a real life example that you can understand much more easily and relate to much more easily. If you have a car and you think of the brake in the car, you think as, okay, business is the accelerator, the CEO is the steering wheel, risk manager is the brake. That's how you think of it, right? He is the one who prevents you from going fast, is how you would normally think about it. And remember this for the rest of your lives, whenever you hear of risk. Risk manager is not the brake. Risk manager is not the guy preventing you from going fast. He is enabling you to go fast. If there were no brakes in the car, you could not go fast. Because when you needed to stop, you wouldn't be able to stop. Right? And no matter what journey you take, there will be times where you need to apply the brake. So brake is, if you constantly keep your foot on the brake, then obviously you're not going to be able to go fast. But that's not risk management. That's just being plain dumb. Right? So think about risk management is something that enables you to figure out when to go fast, when to go slow. And risk management is not just the brake. It also includes a speedometer. It also includes driver training. It also includes looking out at the signage which tells you what is the safe speed limit on this street. It also means changing your behavior, thinking if I drive too fast, I get caught, then I will bribe the cop and I'll go scot-free. You have to change your thinking around the fact that you can't do that. So if you define success as reaching a destination on time without negative consequences, you also have to worry about the consequences of not getting caught by the cop and not for over speeding. So you change the entire way you approach how you encounter such scenarios and how you will behave in such scenarios. It's about changing hearts and minds and behaviors as well. And when you think about risk management that way, you don't see it as being antithetical to being agile.
Just 30-second addition to the regulation, because I recently completed my law graduation, and it changed my perspective towards law and regulation. So law and regulations are not the hurdle; they are there to safeguard us, safeguard the organization, safeguard the citizens. But its implementation is what becomes a hurdle, and this is the responsibility of not only the regulator but the organization and the actual implementer on the ground, that we need to make it easy, quick and simple, through automation or through simplification, through adapting the technologies. For the implementation has to be simple and straightforward, so that it's easy to adapt and does not become a hurdle in decision making.
Actually, that was my next question, wherein I was wanting to know from you that the more stricter or tighter the regulations become, do they curtail or restrict innovation? Or ultimately, what's the aim is to promote the responsible risk taking? What exactly do you think that they're doing with that example of GE coming in the picture? I mean, anybody, or maybe Saurabh, would you like to take this?
So again, speaking from banking industry, as far as regulations are concerned, we want a safe banking system. There's no question about it. And I'd like to piggyback on the analogy that Shantanu provided. We want safe cars driving on highways too. But we don't make a choice to drive them at 10 kilometers an hour, because that would reduce freedom of movement. It would devastate the economy. So we make trade-offs between making sure that we have right level of safety, but at the same time, it will help power the economy. And that holds true for banks too. Regulations keeps us safe, but at the same time allowing us to keep the economy vibrant and current. And I believe it's important to foster ongoing constructive collaboration between the policymakers, the regulators, and industry representatives throughout the preparation and implementation rollout of the regulation to ensure optimal alignment and harmony.
Use the word responsible risk taking. I think the easiest way I would respond to it is when you innovate, you take risk, right? And in that, there's a concept called fail fast. Companies that embrace fail fast well essentially are driving a culture where you literally reward failure. There are leaders who are well known for that. They say, fail, don't make the same mistake the second time. So if you innovate, invest dollars if you have to, but have the humility to very quickly understand that you've got something wrong, and which is where the concept of MVP comes from, viable product. A company like GE, which went for Six Sigma, switched from Six Sigma to fail fast. They said, come up with an MVP, get it out to the market, listen to what the market's saying, have that humility, and then fail fast if you haven't got it right. And that, to me, is a very simple way of taking responsibility and doing what you said, which is responsible risk taking. Because if you don't take risks, which means you won't innovate, which you don't innovate, highly likely someone else is going to beat you to it. So I think that's a very simple one.
So I'd like to supplement on what my panelists just talked about. See, regulations are there for a reason, right? And for all the right reasons that we have just talked about. Now, see, the regulators, they also understand that, they are regulating a company to do a business in the right way. They are not there to stop the business, right? And now, every regulator, they understand that it's their responsibility not only to regulate, but also to develop the industry, right? So now I can talk about, let's say, the insurance regulator, right? IRDAI. So they have the word regulatory as well as development as a part of their ethos. Second, what they have done is before they come out with a regulation, they release a draft white paper. They call for industry stalwarts, all experts in their field from different companies. They come, they brainstorm, and they see that what could be the next level of change that such regulation can bring in. Having said that, even after coming out with a regulation, it does not become the complete lining. There are councils being created under the regulator. Let's say in an insurance regulator, we have a life council, we have a general council, we have a claim council, wherein industry folks, they come, they discuss their challenges, they share their challenges with the regulator, and we have seen that amendments and addendums have been added to the regulations which were initially brought in, and that has actually driven the development of the insurance industry. And we talk about insurance penetration. Good that today we are at about 3.5-4%. Talk about a decade back, we were not even at 1.5%. Right? So things are changing. We should not be looking at regulation as a obstruction. Instead, it is basically a guiding force for you to develop the industry and bring change.
Very well said, Anjan. All right, so let's now shift the focus of our discussion to our young audience, the future leaders in the room. So one piece of advice for our young professionals on balancing risk, agility, and resilience. So any one of you would want to pitch in and start?
I'll take a quick stab at it. My first advice to all of you would be to think of risk management as something that all of you should consider as something that you need to get better acquainted with. As I mentioned right at the beginning, it is something that applies to all organizations, and as other panelists have also spoken, it applies to all functions, and it applies to all courses that you can study over here. I know the way it's taught on campuses, it is taught as a subset of finance, but risk management is a much wider topic than just that. So that's my first piece of advice. Second, think of how you can better upskill yourselves in this area. There are opportunities to invite people like your panelists here as guest speakers or as visiting faculty to come and do some courses for you guys, or to impart some other coaching for you. And failing that, there are opportunities to upskill yourself outside of your institute through online tools, etc., and other global certification and accreditation institutions. So do try and seek inputs and training in this area, and that will separate you from your competition, not only in this institute, but from other institutes as well. And that is the difference between, and that can make the difference between your employability in the eyes of prospective employers. So that's one piece of advice that I can give you. The second is, risk management is not about what you can read in a textbook or in a course or in a PowerPoint presentation. It's about a way of life. It's about way of living and behaving and acting all the time, not just once. So think of it as something that is very core and fundamental to the way you think, act, feel, behave. And similarly, when you get into the company, whichever company you join, you will encounter people from the risk function. Think of them as your partners, not as adversaries or opponents. And think of them as someone who can enable your performance and enable your success, rather than as impediments to your performance and your delivery. And that will make for a better working relationship with them. That will also set you up for future successes and give more predictability to your own performance. That's my advice to you.
I will add to that. So, and a very simple, thing I'll add, which is applicable to, all walks of life, to each professionals, students, everyone. Be adaptable. So if you are adaptable, because change are inevitable. Change will happen at different stage of, professional career, personal career. Change will keep on happening, either technological change, professional change, personal change, educational change. Things will happen. You have to be adaptable and think from as a leader of the future, because probably you will land in the market in 2027. by then the world would have changed with this AI coming in. And it's not only AI. Tomorrow it might be something else, and after 5 years there will be something else. And it happened, not just now while we are living in one of the complex environment. It has always happened. Like the Earth has reset it almost 100 years every cycle. So even our parents, like my parents, just imagine they would have seen computers first time in their life. They have to adapt themselves. We are still competent that we know AI is there, but we have lots of material available on YouTube and Google. We can go learn and adapt. So it's still easier compared to what our previous generation would have seen. So my advice is be adaptable. Think as a leader of the future what you are going to see when you land in the future, and that's and AI is definitely at this point of time is the biggest change that is coming. Well, it was always there, but in general, in public, it has come now. There is a recent report from RBI. It's a framework actually, which they call free framework. I'll highly recommend all of you to go through it. While it's a long 70-80 pager, but I'll recommend you to go through their 6 sutra, the principles that they have defined, along with some 26, recommendation that they have made. It's very quick and easy because, I could go through it. Generally, I see law and regulation quite difficult to interpret and understand, but this framework is quite simple. You get everything, what you need to know from an AI perspective, not necessarily all pages, just 2-3 pages, relevant index you can refer. I'll highly recommend it for you. But prepare as a leader of the future. Best of luck.
So I'll go probably next. So I always take cue from life. And I started my discussion with all of you with saying that risk is a part of life. There will be no life, there will be no business if there is no risk. Okay? So having said that, Chanakya famously said to a king, Chandragupta Maurya, that if you got to be the smart king who takes risk-based decision, do these 3 things: retrospect, introspect, and prospect. Retrospect, learn what has gone wrong. Introspect, what are you doing wrong? And prospect, find out what can go wrong. That will equip you to take the right decision, which is for the benefit of the countrymen. That applies till today and will continue to apply. So that's my only advice, whatever you do in your life. Thank you.
So my son hates me every time, I try to give him a pep talk. But still I try to keep my neck out and say, I have a very simple mantra to share with you all. Treat every major goal as series of mini bets. Try to break big, uncertain projects into tiny time box initiatives. Take carefully calculated risk on each initiative. Gather rapid feedback because you're talking agile. Iterate and pivot. Over time, you'll realize that you're able to keep your downside risks low. You're able to move with the pace of learning. And then, as Subhashish said previously, failure then is just a data point, not a catastrophe. And that whole cycle of plan, act, review, and adapt not only balances risk and agility, it forges lasting resilience. That's all.
So I deliberately wanted to go last on this one because all of this was absolute music to my ear, because you have to understand that when you run an institute which only teaches risk management, and to have everyone around you actually say why it's so important, it's absolutely had to be music to my ears, because till some time back, even when we set up the institute, most people would say, kya hai, kyun hai, why do you need this? Reality is we're the world's only risk management institute. But 3 things. The first, that it doesn't sound like this guy is really Stone Age himself. I opened up an article so that you guys know that I'm reading off an article. 95% companies have seen 0 return on their AI investments, and the reason is ... This is MIT. This is not Indian press. Read more of this. it's important to realize why it's happening. It's not to say it is not going to give returns. It's very important because therein lies the real risk in AI. And that spend, by the way, is $30 to $35 billion if you read the article of zero return. So that's just one. Two, irrespective of what you do, which function, finance, HR, marketing, whatever, sales, wherever you go, like you heard everyone say, risk is absolutely omnipresent, unfortunately. And therefore, in every decision that you take, apply what I simply call the 360-degree risk lens, which is what can go wrong. Just ask us the question, what can go wrong in terms of customer, supplier, regulation, people, your own people, whatever. Apply that. More often than not, you'll get your decisions right. And apply that even in your personal decisions. It works as well. And the last one, which is a little bit more philosophical, which is follow your passion, have a purpose. If you can do that, you will be a happy soul. Because as I've always said, when passion and employment meet, you hit bliss point. It doesn't happen too early in life, but if you can get to that point, you sorted. And do try and find a purpose in your life at some stage. I'm not saying right now, but try and find a purpose in your life, because once you start pursuing your purpose, most other things get obliterated. And the ability to chase that wildly with infinite passion, live with, like everyone who knows me knows that I am typically a 4-hour sleep person, all of that's possible. Have a purpose, follow your passion, stay happy. Thank you.
I'll just add 30 seconds more, very practical tips. Think of risk management as not somebody else's problem, but your problem, regardless of which function you'll end up in, marketing, sales, business development, whatever else. Very much like you do at home. So at home, you're the one who figures out how to prevent fires at home. You're the ones who make sure that when you're lighting diyas in Diwali, you're not lighting them close to candles. You're the one who figures out that you need to have a fire extinguisher at home. You're the one who has to figure out what the fire escape plan in your building is. You're the one who also has to make sure that the sprinklers in your building are working. So you do all of these things when it comes to fire at home. Think exactly like this when you enter the corporation or wherever you choose to work. Think of risk management as your job, not somebody else's job.
Thank you so much. Well, with this, we have come to the end of this discussion. And now I'd like to open the discussion for the audience, where they can have their own questions for the panel. So any questions from the house? Yes, we have one there.
So much for this informative session. I just want to ask, in this changing environment,
We can hear you, it's all right.
in this changing environment, how is risk management evolving, keeping in mind data privacy?
Keeping in mind?
Data privacy.
Well, I think one of the things I mentioned was the whole point of countries creating walls, right? Part of it is, again, data privacy. Data privacy, so you have to understand, when you think of data privacy, obviously there's DPDP as an act in it, that's different. But at the heart of it is, what is sort of PI, personal information, for example. That's what data privacy is focused on. But risk management per se, for risk management, data privacy is not something new. It's not about evolving. Actually, data privacy has existed. I've forgotten also when was GDPR rolled out. GDPR, I think, is what, at least 10 years now? Yeah. So GDPR, which is the big European stuff, it's at least 10 years. You got a California law, I think, about the same. So I don't think it's new, but I think to your question on how is risk management evolving, I think the number of businesses that are now starting to realize that there is higher exposure to DP is phenomenal. Take educational institutions. Not too many educational institutions earlier used to think about the fact that all counselors have personal information on the students that they call. And many of those counselors are directly associated to institutes. They've all started, those who've realized the implication of it have started dissociating counselors completely, saying, well, you come through an agent, you're not my guy. So what risk management is trying to do is actually figure out what's the chain through which this data privacy exposure comes to you, and how many more sectors beyond what was the obvious ones. You always thought that Walmarts of the world, Targets of the world are exposed to data privacy, right? Banks obviously are, or financial institutions in general. It's the catchment area of DP is growing, and there is far more studies happening saying where else can you get exposed through. That would be really my take on that.
Two very specific things that are changing as a result of data privacy laws. One is data sovereignty and data residency. So countries now are mandating, or regulators are mandating, that data be stored in their jurisdictions, and in many cases they say only in that jurisdiction, not just a copy. The original should stay in the country, never go out, ever, right? That complicates life significantly for many companies who have overseas offices where their main server is held. So that complicates lives. Secondly, the cloud data that is stored on the cloud. Until recently, you could not mandate to your cloud service provider which jurisdiction you wanted your data in. So he could put it wherever it was convenient for him. Now, organizations are having to tell their service provider, I want it in my country only. Please create an instance of your cloud in my country. That conversation has started happening in the recent past, and that complicates life for the organization and also for the tech company providing these services. Likewise, earlier, until recently, you could collect mountains of data for your customers and use it at your beck and call as the way you wished. Now data has to be used with the customer's consent and only for the purpose he has given the consent for. So the entire industry around becoming better informed about what type of data you have for your customers, what purpose you've taken it for, and making sure the customer is okay with it at all points of time, because that consent is also revocable. So that complicates life a hell of a lot as well. But these are all trends in the right direction, and they are good things to do. But yes, they make life for risk managers a little bit more complicated.
Just a quick addition. So data privacy is one of the risk, that is not aggravated and is part of AI. So with AI, now the organization need to think like, so far people were, exploring the data theft. But now AI tools are as well, exploring the data, and that's one of the biggest risks within AI. So, and it's not only about organization; it's about individual as well. And my worry is more from an individual perspective, because today, we have data with lots of organization. If they are not keeping it secure, then this AI tools, which are like a very heavy driven on the research, they can pick it and just show it. So, and it both way. It's not about organizations or my data getting leaked. It's about how I'm utilizing my AI tool. Are they secure enough to ensure that we are not breaching any data privacy of any other organization, or intellectual property rights of any organization, or trademark licensing and all. So it has actually aggravated and has to be embedded in AI as a control mechanism.
Last bit, which is data privacy linked, is what you heard Shantanu say, that countries keeping data within their territory. This is what it does. If you have large data being analyzed, earlier, most of the, for example, there are so many compliance tools all of them would be using. All of us have used as consulting firms. We had the ability to analyze data across the globe. The tools learned, this whole machine learning, AI, all of that was on the basis of global data. Now suddenly, it is becoming so difficult because the algo on Mandarin data can only be run in that geo. You cannot run that algo and say, it's literally that tough. So now imagine the ability to run algos on global data starts disappearing. And these are things that people are gradually figuring out, and countries are coming up with more and more sort of difficult regulations. So great questions, a very interesting one, but I don't think there's a lot yet to evolve. Let's keep it.
Thank you. So we have paucity of time right now. We won't be able to take more questions. So we'll be now closing the discussion, and as we close, would like to summarize the discussion with key takeaways that we had from it. First thing first, resilience is not about absence of risk. Rather, it is the ability to adapt and grow through it. And as we talk about risk management, of course, is embracing risk, but then you have to prioritize which risk to embrace first, and you have to be proactive in doing so. And lastly, I believe what we summarized with is risk managers are not the brakes of a car. They are basically enablers of value creation in the organizations. So with this, I close the discussion. And I thank the panelists. I am grateful to all of you to actually, share your valuable time, experience, and wisdom with our students. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
That was indeed a very insightful discussion. Now, on the behalf of Finance Club and everyone present today, I request Professor Dr. Yukti Bajaj to felicitate our esteemed guests. I would request Mr. Saurabh Jain to kindly come forward and accept the token of gratitude. Next, I would request ma'am to felicitate Mr. Subhashish Nath with the token of gratitude. Next, I would request Mr. Shantanu Srivastav to please accept our token of gratitude. Now, I would request ma'am to present a token of appreciation to Mr. Ranjan Bhattacharya. Last but not the least, I would request ma'am to felicitate Mr. Mohammed Saad with the token of appreciation. I would like to thank our esteemed panelists for taking out time from their incredibly busy schedules to share their thought-provoking insights with all of us today. Your perspectives have truly broadened our understanding. I would also like to take this opportunity to request the Secretary of the Finance Club, Harsh Raka, to thank our moderator, Professor Dr. Yukti Bajaj, for gracing today's discussion. Your guidance has made this session highly engaging and insightful. We thank you for your presence here today, ma'am.
Ladies and gentlemen, with this, we conclude the Finance Summit of Conventus 2025. We are certain that today's session has been enlightening for each one of us. I would like to extend my appreciation to all the guests, participants, speakers, professors, students, and the staff of IMI Delhi for making this event a success. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to our esteemed sponsors for the invaluable support in making Conventus 2025 a grand success. A special thanks to our title sponsor, Bank of Baroda, whose partnership has been instrumental in bringing this event to life. We are equally thankful to our co-sponsor, RPSG, and our Finance Summit sponsor, Indian Bank, for their continued encouragement. Our appreciation also goes to ICICI Bank, the banking partner, LIC, the insurance partner, HFCL, the telecom solutions partner, and STEM Executive Search, the sustainability partner, for their support in diverse domains. We sincerely thank Key Properties, the real estate partner, Phoenix Global, the learning partner, Real Enfield, the exploration partner, Vanessa Care, the fragrance partner, Plum Loving, the bath and body care partner, Go Grab, the convenience partner, White Heaven, entertainment partner, and Fever FM, the media partner, for enriching today's discussion. Your collaboration and trust continue to inspire us to make every edition of Conventus bigger, better, and bolder.
I now request the Finance Club members to come up for a photograph with our esteemed panel.